Welcome everybody to the second session of our virtual open day today. My name is Hannah Griffiths. I'm one of the recruitment and admissions managers for the Oxford MBA. It's a pleasure to have so many of you joining us early afternoon for us, but morning, evening, depending on wherever you guys have joined us from in the world. You're all very welcome. I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by my colleagues Dan Kiernan and James Henton from our Career Development Centre. James and Dan are going to be leading the session this afternoon, that's going to be focused on CVs. So they'll give you a bit of insight in a moment into the format of the session and what they're going to cover. We'd like as much engagement from you guys who've joined us as possible. If you have any questions at all as we're moving through the session, please send them through to us via the Q&A box that you can see on your screen. James and Dan will do their best to get through as many of those questions as they possibly can before the end of the session. So yeah, please send them through. Don't be shy. We know that you can only see us on the screen, but we would love to have as much engagement from you guys as possible. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Dan and James to introduce themselves properly and make a start to the session.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Hannah. Just to let you know, everyone, we're also going to be using the chat box as well. We're not going to ask you to do anything difficult or answer any hard questions. And no, we're not going to be assessing your performance or anything like that. But it's good for us to get something coming back from you. So get ready to use the chat box. So my name's Dan Kiernan. I'm head of the Global Industries career team and a career coach as well. And my background before I came into careers, I spent 10 years as an operations manager at the Bank of New York, and I spent 6 years in a fintech startup. So that meant my interaction with CVs was as a hiring manager. So I was the person who was looking at CVs and deciding whether I wanted to recruit someone or not, whether I wanted to hire someone or not. So that's where I'm coming from when it comes to CVs. And James, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background with CVs as well, please?
Cool, thanks, Dan. Yeah, so my name is James Henton. I am a career coach and employer engagement manager within the global industry team. So for my sins, I report to Dan. So my experience with CVs, I've made a few career transitions in my time, from retail to finance to recruitment to higher education, where I am now. So I was an ex-agency and in-house recruiter. No booing in the chat box, please. So my experience of CVs is vast over the past decade in recruitment, really. So I must have seen, I've got probably 10,000 CVs at least in my time, from also being kind of that person in agency recruitment where I'm having to sift through high volumes of CVs, as well as being in-house recruiter trying to identify CVs from my company's perspective to have as how we'd look at that and hire people. So yes, lots of time spent looking at them.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. And by the way, you're my favorite team member. You're my favorite. You're my favorite today, at any rate. So look, guys, let's get you interacting in the chat a little bit while we get warmed up. Why don't you tell us where you are in the world right now? It's always interesting for us to get a sense of where people are coming from on this call. And also CVs can be different in different markets. So that's quite helpful for us. Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's very international. Always the case when we're doing work here at Saïd Business School. Could you also, in the chat box, let us know how confident you feel about your CV? So you might give yourself a score out of 10, or you might have a word or a sentence that describes how confident you feel about your CV. But let's just get a sense of where people are at. Oh, we're getting lots of 7s and 8s,
numbers,
James.
Yeah,
that's very hopeful. Some people are 6s. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Very nice. Thank you very much, people. Let's do one more then. Go on, James.
Interesting there. We've got some people at a certain score for the UK, certain score for US. So that's interesting for the
got a different
geographical spin. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, at least they're thinking the right way, because you've got to tailor your CV for different markets and for different sectors and even different organisations. That's right, isn't it, James?
Indeed, it is. Indeed, it is.
Why don't you, in the chat box then, guys, also tell us what are your biggest concerns are about your CV or about producing CVs? And it'll give us a sense of what we might need to address on the rest of this webinar. So we'll give you a chance to type some of those things up. While you're doing that, I'll say a bit more about how this session is going to run. So you may be very confident about your CV. It looks like some of you are. Some of you could be confident about your CV, but you're wondering about how you're going to adjust it for a different career path, or how you're going to tailor it to make an application to a business school. Or some of you perhaps don't feel confident about your CV at all. You know, you might be really at the starting point with this kind of thing. Whatever stage you're at in this workshop, what we're going to do is share some key principles for producing a good CV. We'll point out some of the most common pitfalls that we see, and we're going to let you know how recruiters, whether they are an agency recruiter or an in-house recruiter like James used to be, or whether they are people reviewing applications to business school, we're going to let you know how recruiters review CVs, what's going through their mind and how they do it. We're not quite sure how long this is going to take. Maybe it'll be 30 or 40 minutes, but we'll try and leave some time for your questions at the end. So if you do have questions, put them in the Q&A and we'll try and address those. And we're definitely going to be finished by 1 o'clock. So you'll have plenty of time to get your lunch or have a break or whatever it is before you go on to the next part of the open day. Right, I hope that sounds okay for everyone. Are we ready, James? Shall we go ahead?
Yeah.
Did you see anything interesting in people's concerns there?
I think that there's a few things which kind of are fairly common around sort of length of CV, which is always an interesting one, especially when we get, because we say 1 page is what it needs to be when you're sort of coming out of the MBA, regardless of length of experience, because that's what a lot of our recruiters want to see. It's a very short amount of time they have to review CVs, so being clear and concise is going to be key. How to communicate achievements effectively, which is a very valid point, and we see that all the time.
Yeah.
I won't go into what we suggest just yet, as we'll get to that. But yeah, some common themes around kind of the ensuring that you stand out really, and demonstrating the right requirements for the job you're applying for.
Well, it's always the sort of common concern. So no one here seems to have come up with anything that's really unusual or something that we've never dealt with before. So that's really good. Let's do another question in the chat box then. James has just touched on this. How long do you think recruiters spend reviewing your CV? So when you send it in, like you might have spent days and days working on it, like really worked on it very hard. How long do they spend looking at it? So we're getting 1 minute, 30 seconds. I've seen a 5 minutes, a 2 minutes, 10 to 15 seconds.
5 minutes. If I don't think I've spent 5 minutes on a CV in my life when I was in recruiting.
Some 30 seconds. Yeah, some more answers coming through. So we've got a range of answers.
Yeah, I'd say the average is looking at 30 seconds to a minute, isn't it?
First impression, 8 seconds. That's actually closer to the truth. So research tells us, and actually experience tells us, the experience of James and I, that on average it's sort of 6 to 10 seconds for the first scan of a CV. Now, of course, it might get scrutinized in more detail later on, but that first scan where someone looks at it and says yes or no to giving this person an interview or putting them on the short list, that's going to be 6 to 10 seconds. Let's ask another question. When you apply for a job, who do you think reads your CV? So who's doing that first scan? What kind of person is it? That's a bit of a harder question. Might take a bit more typing. A lot of people think it's AI or a screening tool. Some people think it's the hiring manager. Some people think it's HR junior level. Some people are saying HR managers coming through. So yeah, I mean, we never really know, do we? It could be any of those people. When I was a hiring manager, I never did the first scan. I was far too busy.
Yeah, you left it to people like me.
I left it to people like James to do the first scan. So it is often someone in the HR function, in the recruitment team in HR. Often it could be someone very junior. Often it's someone who has got a big pile of CVs to review and not much time to review them. And perhaps the only brief they've been given by the lazy hiring manager is the job description. Okay. And yes, sometimes it might be an applicant tracking system or some kind of AI tool. But whether it's that HR junior or an applicant tracking system or an AI tool, they'll be doing the same thing. They'll be cross-referencing the CV to the job description to try and decide if this is a suitable candidate. Does that chime with your experience as a recruiter, James?
Definitely. I mean, I think depending on the size of the institution, I was always working on between kind of like 30 to 50 jobs potentially at any one time. So I have hiring managers banging on the table going, James, when am I going to get my CVs? The application's closing soon. What are you doing? When can I expect to see some results and at least a short list of applicants? The way I used to do it is if there was a CV that resonated with the job I was recruiting for or had some interesting experience, I'd just immediately give them a call and say you've applied, sort of tell me about why you've applied, and talk to me more about your CV and experience. And that initial call could last anything from 5 to 10 minutes, and to enable to give me confidence to then go to the hiring manager and say, yep, this person is potentially someone you want to meet after me speaking to them. So there are various routes. I think many people think AI scans over it more than it does. And my belief is that to get the best out of your hiring methods, having a physical person sat there to do the initial CV screen is important. But as we said, it is that initial quick read through on job titles, any keywords, any specific experience that relates to this job.
Yeah, I mean, what you say there brings up another side point, which is applying early can be really useful, because if you've got a good recruiter on the other end who, as they sift the CV, starts making phone calls, they may find a good candidate before they even get to the closing point of the application process. So that's a good tip. When I was a hiring manager working for the Bank of New York, I used to read CVs about 30 seconds before the interview. I'd hit print, get up from my desk, take it off the printer, take the CV off the printer, and read it as I walked to the interview room. So it was literally a 30-second scan, if that, while I was also trying to navigate my way down the corridor to do the interview. So it's just underlining, how your CV needs to make a very quick impact in a very short space of time. Okay, you can just think about this. No need to put this into the chat box. But what do you think the implications of that information is for you? Whether it's applying for a job, whether it's the hiring manager who's reading it walking down the corridor, or the recruiter who's got a big pile of CVs to sift, or an application for business school where the recruitment and admissions team have got big piles of CVs to sift. If the first scan is 8 to 10 seconds, what are the implications of that for you? So I think the implications are, it needs to be clear, very clear, nothing ambiguous, nothing generic, nothing on there that wastes space or doesn't make an impact with the reader. It needs to be concise. So as James has said, our employers and our recruitment admissions team here prefer to see a CV on one page, very easy to absorb, very nicely formatted, nothing distracting, nothing that makes it hard for that poor pressed recruiter to take in the information you want to share with a quick scan. And it needs to be relevant to the job description. So every single time you make an application, it needs to be tailored to the job description. So clear, concise, and relevant. I think they're the three key principles for producing a good CV. James, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Anything
definitely.
I'm missing?
The massive bugbear for me as a recruiter, and when I look at CVs, is ridiculous fonts and poor formatting. So formatting where the bullet points aren't the same. You've got some indented, some are not below, different fonts are used, different formatting. For me, it demonstrates an immediate lack of attention to detail. And why would I want you in my firm if you can't even format your CV correctly? So for me, me, it's having things that it looks professional. You've got highlighted things in the right place. You've got bullet points which are all aligned, the same font. It looks like a professional document, that you haven't spent 10 seconds copy and pasting things from all over the place to get into it. So for me, that's kind of my first kind of what I'm looking for is, does this look professional and make sense? Yes, it does. I'll keep reading. If it doesn't, then it usually went in the bin quite quickly.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. So now let's go back to the chat box. Guys, what do you think are common mistakes on CVs? James has just given you a couple of clues there, but there's many more. So what do you think are common mistakes on CVs?
I'm going to pick up on someone using fancy templates there. A plain template wins every time for me, especially in the UK. And I know this changes internationally, like pictures on CVs drive me mad. It doesn't matter what you look like, it's about your experience. So avoid massive blue columns on one side highlighting stuff that I don't care about. All I want to see is chronological order of what you've done and making it specific and clear and concise, as Dan said.
Yeah, we've actually got some nice answers coming in here. So people who put in too much information, people who include too much jargon, lots of people have picked up on these formatting points. I think they are some of the most common and most frustrating errors. Irrelevant information, that was always the one for me as a hiring manager. I just, I haven't got time to try and figure things out and figure out if you're a good candidate or not. If you can't be bothered to tailor your CV to my vacancy, I can't be bothered to figure out whether you're a good candidate or not. So you go in the pile. Too vague, we've had from someone. I completely agree with that as well. I like people who can be specific and precise. And it's much more impactful to see that on a CV.
The jargon is a good one. So using acronyms which are only known in your industry, especially if you're making a career transition where your experience in finance, you're maybe trying to change to tech, using information which recruiters don't understand. So shortened acronyms of whatever it may be. Well, I don't know what that is, so I'm not.
Yeah.
That might be exactly what you need, but if I don't know it, let's keep it simple use of language.
Yeah, that's right. I think perhaps a really good point is just having empathy for the recruiter. Every step in a recruitment process, whether you're writing a CV or a cover letter, whether you're at the interview, whether you're trying to network with someone, empathy for the recruiter and the hiring manager. What's important for them? That's what you've got to try and get across. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. I'm going to share an example of a poor CV, a bad CV. I don't need you to engage in the chat box or anything like that. I'm going to give you about 60 seconds just to take a look at this and see how many errors you can spot. So hopefully you can see that CV on screen. James, can you confirm that's come up on the screen?
Yeah, that's come up. I can see that one.
So good old Bob Squash here. We love Bob Squash. Just take a look, see what kind of errors you can spot, see how many you get. And then we'll share our answer sheets of this CV, how many errors we think we can spot.
And just so you know, I am making a note of some of the questions that are coming in, everyone. So we will circle back to a lot of these questions. The reason why we're not answering them now is because over the course of the next kind of half an hour, we will hopefully have answered them for you, just so you're aware. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, James. James is very diligent. Thank you. I'm much more kind of improv. So look, hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at that CV. Don't worry if you've not had the chance to go all the way through it. Let me stop sharing that. And now let me share what I think are the answers. And I'll run through some of this for you. Is that coming up on the screen, James? Let me know.
Yep, I can see that one.
Fantastic. So let's scroll all the way up here. Let's just quickly run through this for people's benefit. I think the title should be in bold. You should try and use professional email where you've got a qualification on there. We want to understand your grades. If your grades aren't on there, we think you're hiding them for some reason. Something like India, we should probably have the full word there. Subheadings should be bolded, perhaps more importantly than those formatting points. When you get to the bullet points, we need more detail. We need to understand the scope of the tasks, how you achieve things, what your impact was, what the output of this activity was, what the result was. Inconsistent use of full stops. He's got them in some places, but not in others. Here, he hasn't told us what country he's in. Spelling error immediately goes in the bin. Weak verb. So where people say I assisted with, I worked on, I supported. I don't know if you were doing really important work that was really contributing to this project or just making teas and coffee and doing a bit of filing. So don't use weak verbs like assisted. Here's another verb. Here's another bullet point. Could be good, could be bad. We don't really know. This person hasn't told us what their impact was. What exactly did they do? It sounds like it might be good, but bear in mind, I've got 6 to 10 seconds to scan this CV. You're not making enough impact. Probably goes in the bin. This point's a bit better, but it's still vague. I don't know what operational excellence is. I don't know what accuracy means in this context. Another weak verb. Another bullet point where I don't understand the scope and impact. And another one. Here we've got a gap in the timeline. Looks like they've missed out a couple of years in their chronology. That's always a big no-no for a recruiter. It raises big red flags when people are reviewing CVs, so you've got to address it somewhere. They're using the wrong tense. I often see that on CVs, and James has already mentioned this. Jargon can be really confusing. Oh, I hate this one. Never use etc. on a CV. It drives me nuts.
It doesn't mean anything.
Puts my teeth on edge. Why are you making me do the work of thinking what those other things might be? Tell me what they are or don't include it at all. This is really vague. Is this a job title? I'm not sure. Here's one that I know annoys James. So interests that are just words. So what do you do on climate? You know, are you leading some sort of climate think tank? Are you volunteering for an activist organization? Or, you know, is it just something you read about in the news? Formatting error, you know, this shouldn't be indented. And who are YDP? More use of jargon. And this is what sometimes I struggle with when I'm talking to students. They've got things on the CV that are very precious to them, you know, probably very good achievements at the time, but they're out of date or irrelevant now. So those come off a CV. And in this instance, this person's left too much blank space at the bottom of the CV, makes them look like they haven't got much to say about themselves. Often we have the other problem. People have got too much, you know, they've given us 2 or 3 page CVs. Both of those are a problem. And when you include your languages, just use words everyone understands, like fluent or intermediate. We don't understand all of these different code words people use for their levels of language. What do you think, James? What do you think of good old Bob Squash?
Good old Bob. Yeah, I mean, I think you pointed out some great points there, Dan. There are some things that do kind of really annoy me, as you mentioned, especially the interests section and the use of etc. Sort of drives me mad because it doesn't mean anything to anyone. It's very vague. Yeah, use that gap to put something in, like a figure, even perhaps on something you could have used it in that short space of time, or a percentage in terms of demonstrating your impact. So yeah.
Fantastic, thank you, James. So, who would like to see a good example? Let me share with you what I think is a good CV. Not perfect, but a good CV. So the first thing to say about this CV is it's on one page and it's nicely formatted. We've got very clear sections. We've got enough white space that it's going to be easy for us to absorb. So that's something that gives me a lot of confidence looking at this CV. If you go through it, there's no spelling mistakes, there's no grammar mistakes, and it's a very sober format, as James was describing. We've not got any sidebars or fancy fonts or strange clip art or weird pictures. Very easy for someone to read. Most people read CVs like an F. So they go up and down the chronology, and then they go across the headings and subheadings, and then they dive into the detail where it looks interesting. So that's why this format works really well. And what's most important about this CV, I think, is it has good bullet points. And this is really the meat and drink of CVs. This is what really counts. Everything else we've been talking about, things like formatting, spelling, grammar, getting it onto one page, that's a hygiene factor. That's like level 0. You know, that's table stakes. You know, that's a given that you're going to do that. But what really makes a difference for you is how well you write your bullet points. So take a moment to look at these bullet points here while I'm sharing my screen. I'll give you a while to try and absorb some of those.
It's actually something I don't like on there, Dan.
Is there? What don't you like?
GMAT.
Tell me more about that.
If it's under 700, it shouldn't be on your CV.
Good point. Good point.
Especially if you're looking at consulting, because a 690 GMAT will turn off an MBB firm quicker than you would realise.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, James. So perhaps not a perfect CV, but then my take, there's no such thing as a perfect CV. It's always a work in progress, and it's always subjective. It's always going to be subjective in the eyes of the reader. So we can never quite know, but we just have to work to these principles that we think are best practice. So what I like about these bullet points is they are a list of achievements. They're not a list of responsibilities. I often see CVs where it looks like someone's copied and pasted their job description, and it's a list of responsibilities. Well, okay, that's cool, but it doesn't tell me how good you were at your job. You could have had a load of responsibilities, but been really bad at your job. So it's achievements that tell me if you were doing a good job. It's achievements that tell me if you were having an impact. And most of these are bullet points that describe achievements. There are outcomes at the end of these bullet points. So it's following the format we really like to see. Tell us what you did, how you did it, include some data points to quantify the scope of the role, and tell us what the outcome or the impact was. And if you can quantify that as well, that's even better. And you should be starting all those bullets with a strong verb in the past tense. And I think that's mostly what we're seeing on this CV here. So that's why I'm leaving it up for a while, to give you guys a chance to study it.
And action verbs, if you're, well, what shall I use? Google action verbs. Yeah. The amount of CV kind of websites that pop up to give you a list of 50 plus action verbs for you to use in your CV. It's easily findable out there on good old Google, or your preferred search engine.
Other search engines
are available, yeah. But yeah, you can easily kind of find action verbs if you're struggling to. There's nothing worse as well than seeing kind of managed 5 times in a CV. Come on, think about it a bit more. How can you have led a team, kind of developed a team, or coached? Kind of think about how you want yourself perceived as well.
Yeah, thank you, James. So looking at this one here that I'm highlighting, does the highlight come up? It's the third one down.
Yeah.
This person hasn't said responsible for researching investment opportunities. They have said recommended investment opportunities in the WhatsApp CRM space by executing the market scan, initiate conversation with 5 stars, leading to 1 deal closure. So it's telling me this person had an impact, even in this short space of time that they were doing this internship. They've started with a relatively strong verb. I don't know if it's the strongest, but it's an action verb. It tells me they were doing something. This is someone who can make recommendations. And I know what they were doing, recommending investment opportunities. I know the context they were doing it in, the WhatsApp CRM space. I know how they were doing it. They executed a market scan and initiated conversations. And I know what the impact was. It led to 1 deal closure. So they've followed the formula perfectly. So remember, hygiene factors, they're things like your formatting, spelling, grammar, getting it onto one page in a nice, clear, readable format. And then where you're really going to differentiate yourself is by having very impactful bullet points that describe what you did, how you did it, and what the impact was. And if you can quantify the impact and give us some data points so we can understand the scope of that responsibility, that's best practice. Anything I've missed, James?
I don't think so. I mean, with the bullet points you've mentioned, it's kind of having data points if you can, kind of action, verb, context, result. Every time for every point you should be putting in your CV. Obviously, we're looking at a CV in isolation without comparing it to a job spec. So the use of language comes into play there in terms of when you're wanting to go into product or strategy, wherever it may be, is your end goal. You're using words which are in the same language as the company you're applying to. So although this is a CV in one context, it's always interesting to see how those compare to the role that you're going for post MBA or whatever it is you end up doing after this session.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, James. It is an important point. Your CV is never really finished. As you're gaining more experience, you might be adding that to your CV or modifying your CV. And then importantly, as James just indicated, when you're applying for specific roles, you're going to tailor the CV to suit those roles. You're going to use their language to describe what you do. So that poor person that's cross-referencing a job description and your CV can immediately pick out the keywords that are in that job description on your CV, and you're that much more likely to get into the yes pile.
And think about the skill you're trying to demonstrate as well in that. It's all very well maybe having a good action point, but you know, what skill am I demonstrating to the recruiter? What are the key requirements of the job I'm applying for? So if you're struggling to think, should this point be in there? Well, what's the skill I'm trying to tell this person about that demonstrates I can do that job? So do think about those elements as well.
Yeah, thank you, James. I suppose some other common pitfalls I see is people not spending enough time on their CV initially and being a little bit lazy about it. Crafting a CV that is in this format that fits on one page with those impactful bullet points, it's going to take some time and effort. So don't expect it's something you can just dash off in an hour or something like that. Invest a bit of time and effort, at least in getting the sort of foundational document right, and then you can make the tailoring and the adjustments as time goes on. So I think that's important. The other error I see, I think James probably sees this too, is kind of at the other end of the scale. It's when students spend far too much time on their CVs and they're actually using it as a way of avoiding things that could be much more productive. Things that could be much more productive might be networking, might be building relationships with people in the organizations that you would like to be hired by, talking to practitioners into the sectors that interest you. That kind of activity is going to give you the real information that helps you decide, first of all, if that's a good career option for you. It helps you with your career decision making. But more importantly, it helps you shape yourself as a candidate. By understanding their world and what's important for them, you can shape yourself as a candidate, not just on your CV, but also when you're doing more networking, or when you're at the interview stage, or producing a cover letter, or filling in an application form. And that networking has a massive side benefit as well. You will create a network of people who could potentially advocate for you in your job search and open up opportunities for you. Anytime you're applying online to a job, you're going to be one of hundreds or even thousands of applications. Anytime you've got a referral, you're going to have a much, much stronger chance of success, because there'll only be a minority of applications for any vacancy that have a referral. So we strongly emphasize networking, building relationships, over and above just working really hard on your CV. I often think CV actually comes at the end of the process. Really, you need to do some good thinking about what you want to get out of your next career move. You then do a lot of networking and discovery and exploration and research to understand what the options are that's going to give you what you want and what's going to be achievable for you and what your entry points into other career paths might be. And then you move on to creating some options for yourself, to activating those options. And that's when the CV becomes really important. So you get a lot of pressure to work on your CV early. And often when we talk about career transitions, the first thing people think of is, oh, I've got to update my CV. But actually, there's a lot of groundwork that comes first. It's actually hard to produce a CV if you don't know what jobs you're going to be applying for. So sometimes we get these things the wrong way around.
Definitely, I would second that, Dan. I mean, as an example, I had a coaching appointments for 2 students this morning, both of which I said, put your CV away. We don't need to talk about this now. You're not looking at structured hiring, which is immediate. You're looking at experienced hire further down the road. So let's focus on your networking and gathering information. And the amount of time, one of the massive pitfalls is kind of procrastinating over your CV and spending a lot of time at, oh, James, is this perfect now? Is this done? No. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be done. Think about how is the best use of your time to spend it when job searching. And a lot of the time, I guarantee it's not spending time on your CV.
Yeah. So we're not undermining the importance of the CV here. Like, the CV is very, very necessary. What we're saying is it is not sufficient. And actually, what's more productive for you is networking, discovery and exploration, talking to people in the career paths that you want to transition into, and really developing your understanding of those career paths so you can make good decisions and position yourself as a strong candidate. What's really, really, really good for you guys is you can start doing that now. You could do all of that work pre-MBA. And so if you do come and do an MBA, whether it's with us or at some other school, you will know in much better detail where you're trying to get to with that MBA, and it means you will maximize the return on investment of doing an MBA. Whereas if you come to an MBA without having done that pre-work, without knowing exactly where you're going to get to, or without knowing exactly what it takes to get there, then the MBA is going to be that much harder for you, and it's going to be that much harder to get the return on investment. So start that work now. We think that's really important. Okay. Well, I think that's everything I wanted to say, James. Shall we go through some of the questions you've taken notes of?
I've taken sort of 15 questions already.
Okay.
So bear with us while we're going through these to then revisit yours. So one of the first questions was around location on a CV. As you would have seen from the formatting which Dan showed on another one, there was just name and contact details. If I'm perfectly honest, that's all you're going to need on it's all I've got on mine. Not that I'm looking, Dan, but in terms of my own CV, especially now with the hybrid working, the different ways of working many businesses are seeing, staying where you are and working for that business is okay. Obviously, that's not taking into account right to work situations and being paid by certain companies. But at this point, again, it takes up room on your CV, having addresses and all this other sort of bits and pieces. So just have your name, phone number, email is absolutely fine, in my opinion, for that one. So don't worry too much about location. They will typically see where you've been located on your jobs, which was, for instance, is on our CV template. Also, I guarantee if they like you, they're going to be looking at your LinkedIn profile. And so they're going to figure out where you are. So don't try and hide it, but it doesn't need to be on your CV, in my opinion, really. A couple of questions around personal statements and executive summaries. Dan, did you want to kind of cover that off?
Well, for me, it's a no. I don't like them. I never did when I was a hiring manager. I never read a personal statement that made me want to hire someone. I often read personal statements that made me say no to someone because it was either just very generic or it had a spelling mistake or a grammar mistake in it. And so it really was just an opportunity for people to make a mistake with very little upside to having a personal statement. Research tells us as well that most recruiters don't look at the personal statement. So my advice is leave them off.
Same with me, and they tend to be very vague. Oh, I'm a very motivated, passionate person about whatever. Cool story, bro. I want to see what skills and experience you've got. Anything you want to tell me that's not in your CV, that's what cover letters are for. That's talking about your passion, your highlighting key experience and all that good stuff. That goes in your cover letter. Don't let it take up room on your CV. Hopefully that covers those off. So what sections, what should you have? So as Dan kind of shared, we've got work experience, education, achievements and interests, really. Dan, anything else you'd add on that?
I'd never really add anything more. We did have a question in the chat box about what order to put them in. I think while you're in work, your work experience comes first, but when you're at business school or in education, then your education section will come first. So it's wherever you're at right now, that dictates which section goes first.
I've just seen a question. I'm going back. Harry's mentioned a question there. I'm missing older experience. That, I mean, I've had what I think between us, Dan, we've got about 50 odd years of work experience.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be putting what I did when I was a shelf filler when I came out of school on my CV. So typically employers are going to be looking at your last 10 years, which I think is a pretty much a good area to go at. Yes, I know we talk about gaps and we don't want to leave anything off, but we're talking more about your MBA CV as well at this point in your career, and they want to see the most recent achievements that you've made, the most recent impact that you've done. So as a rough guide, and again, lots of these questions that are being asked, I'm answering them on a general basis. Sometimes it depends, and it really will do on situations and whatever's going on in your life or has gone on. We can help you. If you come here and are successful, we can help you navigate those journeys. And I'm sure if you didn't end up coming here, they would navigate you in the right direction as well. But yeah, try and sort of keep it like that. Links to like their LinkedIn profile. For me, a link is fine as long as it's a short and sort of hyperlink. You haven't got the entire address going across your CV. So ensure you embed it correctly within the CV. I don't know, Dan, would you have any other links in there?
Probably I'd only have my LinkedIn profile. Maybe if you were someone creative and you had a portfolio on Instagram or something like that, you might consider having a link to that. Sometimes people have links to papers they've published. It's only really relevant if you're going down sort of academic career path. I think in 90% of the cases we see with MBAs, you just need a link to your LinkedIn profile and that'll be enough.
Yeah. Graphics, so company logos, don't do that. The company will speak for itself. If it's a big name and you're worried about, oh, well, I worked for Google for 5 years, they'll look and see Google and go, oh, I know who they are. And if they don't know who they are and it's not a recognizable brand anyway, it's not going to help you. So just the name of the company is absolutely fine. You don't need to make it look pretty. Again, your LinkedIn profile will have all the logos down one side. So it's kind of covered off on that, especially if you've got a link to your LinkedIn. People can look at that. So that would cover off that one.
James, what do you think about people if they've got a smaller organization having a little explanation in brackets or italics about what that organization did?
I don't really care. If I'm perfectly honest, it's all about your skills and experience. If you've got a skill that you've demonstrated, and even if that's a company with you and 4 other people or 5,000 people, and I don't know who they are, if your experience is interesting enough to me and you've demonstrated a skill that I want in comparison to the job I'm recruiting for, I'll use LinkedIn, I'll use Google, and I'll find out what that company does. For me, again, it's just taking up, if you've got 6 companies on your CV as an example, that's 6 lines, which you could be demonstrating a skill or a piece of impact. I will figure it out myself if you've got the skills that are relevant to my job that I'm recruiting for.
Thank you.
And volunteering experience, Dan, that's probably quite key, especially in the impact space. So I'll let you take that one.
So as well as being the head of GI, I lead on impact careers, and volunteering experience can be really useful. It can be a good way to demonstrate genuine knowledge, skills and experience that would be valuable in the workspace. It can also be a good way of demonstrating motivation to get into a particular impact area. So if you are making a career transition from industry into, say, a non-profit that's working on poverty alleviation, but you've got nothing on your CV that says you've ever cared about this problem before, it's going to look a bit weird for a recruiter. So volunteering experience can play an important role in that specific context. I also like to see it on there just to know that people have outside interests and they're good people and they're doing really productive and interesting things outside of work as well.
And sometimes that can go in your interest section if you're struggling to fit it in your CV. So I volunteer myself as an advanced motorcyclist, and I volunteer for the Institute of Advanced Motorists. And teach people how to pass advanced tests. That goes in my kind of volunteering section on LinkedIn and is under my passions. Again, coming back to motorcycling is a passion of mine and an interest, but instead of just putting motorcycling, if I've got IIM Observer and a brief explanation that fits onto maybe a line or just over a line, it's great to get in there to demonstrate that as well. And that's where I would put it and how I would position myself.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, James.
Minimum gap, Dan, for that you would kind of recommend in terms of having an explanation for that gap or leaving it blank?
It's always tricky, but I think anything more than 2 or perhaps 3 months starts to raise a red flag, and it needs some kind of explanation. I saw a question in the chat earlier from someone who had a gap for personal reasons. You are going to have to give an explanation. You don't have to share anything personal on the CV. So you might just say, a career sabbatical for personal reasons, a career break for health reasons, something like that. Recruiters, contrary to popular opinion, they are quite sympathetic people. They understand that people have real lives and these sorts of things can happen. So it's better to give them an explanation than just leave them asking a question about a gap.
And sometimes, as an example, I was made redundant from one of my employers. So I did have a gap of a certain period of time when I was job hunting and interviewing and doing all the good stuff. What I put after the job, after my job, I put sort of redundancy. So then as a recruiter or anyone looking at the CV, I was made redundant from that last job. That makes sense now. So sometimes just a sort of a keyword there is fine at the end of your last job, which kind of demonstrates without you having to put another line in terms of maybe a gap. Or I saw someone mention something due to they had a bit of sickness after and finishing up their degree. Just leave it up as finishing while I was finishing my degree over that time. You don't have to don't be dishonest, but you don't have to go to the nth degree of explanation in your CV. That can be discussed at interview, or maybe not even at all, or maybe it won't even matter. Something around sort of political positioning as well and having time off work. Again, it depends, if I'm perfectly honest. And that would be something, it's probably better of a one-to-one discussion if it's something that's close to your heart or you've been sort of treated in that way. Grades on the CV as well. GPA, absolutely fine. Distinction for a master's maybe you've done previously, absolutely fine. Put that in there. Yep, that works. Don't put, if you're from the UK, you'll understand this, so high school education perhaps in your CV, such as GCSEs or A-levels. No, that was 25, 30 years ago for me. I won't have that in my CV.
Well, these people are younger than you, James.
Yeah,
I think the same rules apply.
Yeah,
your post-16 and post-18 qualifications, they're done now.
And coming back to a question on GMAT, I suppose, as well, if it's over 700, I'd leave it on your CV. If it's not, I wouldn't. But it depends on the sector. For Dan and Impact, and myself in sort of technology, media and entertainment, they probably don't know what a GMAT is. So don't have it in there, I'd say, unless you're going for something like consulting. I think we've covered those. Internship experience, Dan, I think that's very valuable to have on there.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the internship and how long it was and how relevant it is to what you're trying to achieve. But if it's, a month or longer and it's relevant and it's not taking up valuable real estate that you could use for something that was more impactful, I definitely include it on there. And, anything longer than a month, it's certainly going to have a place on there. I think internships are really important for people making career transitions because they demonstrate, firstly, that you're motivated to go out there and start taking the steps required to make the transition. And they show you're gaining some of the experience and some of the knowledge that you need in the new career path. So, yeah, I'm always happy to see internships on there.
Mm-hmm. And someone asked the question, so is the Oxford template, should we use that to apply? Yes. We're talking about having a specific, concise and compelling CV. If you can do that before you've even come on the MBA, obviously the CV is not the only part of the interview process. You're assessed on many different things on coming in, and if you've made your CV specific and compelling to want to have one of our recruitment admissions team to want to have a conversation with you, if you've already done the work for us, yeah, I mean, you keep to the one pager if you can. Be specific and compelling and concise, like we've said. So I think that's a good thing to do. And also, our kind of the Okta template with its sort of rigid headers, again, they're there for a reason. So I would advise anyone against, if, oh, well, I can't fit it all in, I'm going to make the font size 8 and cram all these bullet points in. Nothing turns me off more than seeing me having to really kind of zoom in and figure out, why have you got so much information in here? Think about what you're trying to articulate, think about what you're trying to get across to the reader, and make it easy for them. And if there's so much information in there with long bullet points, too many bullet points, already I'm thinking, oh, I can't be bothered to read this. Next. So think about that. If you're messing around with borders too much, if you want to change it a little bit because it's one line over onto 2 pages, okay, maybe change a border slightly. But if it's 1.5, trying to condense it to 1 by you shrinking text and playing with borders, it should be an alarm bell for you, thinking, I've got too much in here, I need to think about this again and refine it. That's all the ones I'd written down, Dan. I think there's probably more that have popped up in the chat since we started.
I'll see if I can deal with a couple of them. So someone's saying, should we include university scholarships? I think there's a place for them. They say something about you. If they're well-known scholarships, that's a good reason to include them. Or if they're very competitive and you can say, you know, only 10 people out of 1,000 applicants or 10,000 applicants are awarded this, that says something about you. But don't go overboard with university scholarships. I know they're really, really big and important achievements for people, but I often see CVs where they take up a lot of real estate on the CV, they take up a lot of space. And, you know, once you've got one scholarship on there, the point has been made. I'm the kind of person who can get a scholarship. And then the space that you save could be used for something that's more impactful, which is probably going to be bullet points that talk about your work experience. Think about what James is saying about how he's just looking for skills and experience over and above everything else.
Something in here are extracurriculars and particularly sport. I think, Harry, you asked this one. I mean, it's a great thing to have. Again, it comes back to your kind of hobbies and interests. There's another one kind of below that one which talks about that. I mean, are they relevant? I mean, team sports, it's a great way to demonstrate your maybe leadership capabilities if you're a captain, or that you've got a real passion about sport and something that you want to shout about. It's a great thing to include as long as it's recent and relevant. If you were the high school rugby captain that was 5, 6, 7 years ago, it's not relevant. If you are playing in an amateur sports team at the moment, or you do it for fun at the weekends and that's a passion of yours, get it in there, but don't just put rugby. Kind of put part of this team, make it more real for the reader. So it's definitely a great thing to get in there. It shows your ability to communicate, it shows teamwork, it shows lots of skills which probably don't come to mind when you first think of it, but actually is a really good kind of element to have in your CV. And again, that comes back to hobbies and interests. They're not mandatory, but take a company like Google, they look for Googliness, which is basically culture, and they love people who have got random stuff on their CV, like skydiving for charity. I'm a certified sort of scuba diver, and I've been to 78 countries and done it in all of those places. We've got someone this year who did a round the world kind of yachting trip and raced sort of competitively around the world. That's a really interesting thing to have in your CV that not everyone's going to have. So think about, is it interesting? If it's not, get it out of there. Or can I elaborate a little bit more on what it means to me, or demonstrates a skill?
Yeah, I'll pick up a couple from the Q&A box as well. How to express soft skills without sounding cliched. Can be tough. I don't like it when I see people on a CV with a skills section that says something like good communicator or good people person, because it's such a subjective thing. You know, I'll be the judge of whether you're a good communicator or a good people person, or have those soft skills. So I'm much more interested in what you've got in your bullet points. And if you've got a bullet point that shows a project you worked on or initiative you took that required lots of collaboration, or required you to be a really brilliant team leader, or required you to establish partnerships with suppliers or go out and win customers, then implicit in achieving those kind of things is that you must have good soft skills. So I'm always looking at the bullet points. I'm looking for the impact you had in the workplace. And, you know, that's really where you've got to try and express these things.
Yeah, good one, Dan. I mean, I'm just picking up some of this. Is it essential to have your LinkedIn in there? If you've got it and it's up to date, I would put it in. You don't have to have a link to your LinkedIn profile if you don't want to. But I guarantee as soon as I've spoken to you, or if I'm a recruiter and I've seen your name and it's interesting, I'm going to cross-reference your CV to your LinkedIn profile. So make sure, again, if you are putting your LinkedIn profile in there, it's good. And that's a whole different ball game when we're talking about LinkedIn profiles. But if you don't want to have it in there, don't. But someone will probably try and find you if it's not. And I saw someone asking about side businesses, potentially. I mean, I have something I volunteer for on the side as well as a business in the writing kind of industry. I have that on my CV under kind of volunteering or interests. So just having a quick line to say sort of whatever for whatever, doing whatever. That's all you need to have. You don't need to maybe list it as unless it's taken up more of your life than you anticipated, or it does kind of form really a proper part-time job as well as your full-time job. But again, it comes back to a lot of the things that I've said. It does depend on where
I
you're
quite like
go.
seeing those things on a CV. I like entrepreneurial people who are proactive and take the initiative. So anyone who's got a bit of a side hustle or founded their own business, it's a great demonstration of those kind of qualities. Right, look, we've only got a few minutes left. I know Hannah wants to come back on and just say a few words and let you know where to go next in terms of today's virtual open day. I'm sorry we didn't get around to all of your questions. Maybe Hannah or SL, who are managing this behind the scenes, can capture them, sort of copy and paste them or something, and we can have a go at them later. You can also find James and I on LinkedIn. I'm not promising we're going to answer all of your questions over LinkedIn, but yeah, you might like to be connected
especially
to us.
not at the moment with the new MBAs which we've just started.
Oh, yeah,
we're
very busy.
We're touch busy.
Yeah. But you can always find us on LinkedIn, and you might find we answer a couple of your questions there. But with that, we'll draw our section to a close and hand back to Hannah.
Yes, please. And yeah, just to finish up the session, want to say a few thank yous. So firstly, to everybody who dialed in and joined the session. I know I said at the beginning that we would like for you to be engaged. Thank you so much for being so engaged during the session. It was great to see so many answers to the questions coming through in the chat, and so many questions being sent through as well throughout the session. So thank you very much to all of you. James mentioned there that Dan and James are both quite busy at the moment. So our current batch of MBA students started on the program just 3 weeks ago, so this is an incredibly busy time for them in terms of meeting all the new students. So we are very grateful to both of them for giving their time to the session this afternoon, and I'm sure that you all found it, just based on the comments that are coming through in the chat, really useful in terms of the content as well. My colleague Sarah Lou and I will do our best to kind of capture the questions that have been sent through, as Dan mentioned here. And for any of you who have a CV that you want to send through in relation to an MBA application, I should say, rather than for feedback from Dan and James, you can send it through to the MBA recruitment and admissions team, and we'll be happy to give you some feedback in terms of your profile in relation to an MBA application. We hope that some of you will be able to join us for the next 2 sessions of the virtual open day this afternoon. So at 2 p.m. we have an alumni panel that will be led by my colleague Floritza. It's a great session to come along to if you would like to learn a little bit more about what the overall Oxford experience is like. Hearing from current students or alumni is always the best way to get a sense of whether the school might be the right fit for you. So do please come along to that to hear from them and have them share some of their insights and experiences with you. And then to round off the session today at 3:30, we have a Q&A session where we will have colleagues from our MBA program team, our MBA scholarships team, and our admissions and operations manager Charlene Liu from the MBA recruitment team, and will be there to answer any questions that you have in relation to any of those topics. So do come along if you would like to get some more information about those. So I'll let you all go and grab a quick lunch break before those sessions get started. Thank you again to everybody for your time and your engagement, and we'll look forward to seeing some of you this afternoon.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone. Have a good rest of your day.